Hi, it's Heather Tow-Yick, your Issaquah School District Superintendent, and I'm here today with two amazing guests and colleagues to talk a bit about the evolution of our work to accelerate and support our students' success through academic and behavioral supports. And specifically, it's a bit of a tour of the past, but also a bit of how that has evolved, what we've learned, our current work, and what we hope for the future. And I'll say that we have been intentional over time, but we've also had to be reactive at moments. So this is a bit of a snapshot in time of where we are and where we're going. So welcome, and I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Derona Uzzle. I am currently the Issaquah Education Association president and fourth grade teacher at Sunny Hills.
I'm Dana Bailey, Chief Academic and Student Success Officer, formerly Principal at Pacific Cascade.
Great, well, welcome, and thank you so much for this special edition. It's going to be a fun conversation. So I'd love to hear a little bit about where we were 10 to 15 years ago. What was the need and what was happening in the district to support students, and maybe more of the focus then was on behavior?
Yeah. I'll go ahead and start.
Sure.
I know 10, 15 years ago I was at Sunny Hills as a fourth grade teacher. And one of the things that I noticed at that time was the need for working on foundational classroom management skills and how to support that work within the school. And at that time, Sunny Hills started transitioning to our new building. And we had a PBSES coach assigned to our building to help build that foundational work around school-based expectations and how we integrate those expectations within our classroom setting, as well as all of the other settings within the school building.
Mm-hmm. We were noticing a greater evidence of need of students with their mental health and also their social emotional learning. They just needed help in that area.
What is PBSES?
PBSES is the Issaquah way of naming PBIS, which is the national name, so Positive Behavior Supports and Intervention, and the heart of that is it's positive and it's preventative. Other supports we had in the system then and continue now are the Swedish school-based mental health workers who directly serve students in one-on-one counseling.
Great, so this is so helpful to hear because we had systems in place for all of our students, common expectations across schools. We started to have additional supports to help meet more of the needs of more of our students who had a little bit more of an express need through behavior, and then we had supports on sort of the most immediate needs that were coming up through mental health as well. When I came on board in 2022, I saw in all of the elementary schools common-wide school expectations and supports at each level of where a kid might need a little extra help to be their best self in the classroom, but also universal positive supports to support, the kind of positive expectation that we have for each of our students. What else do we have in the system going on, and how else did things evolve?
I think for educators, we were noticing that coming out of COVID, that really had an impact on our students and our educational systems. It was, opening up systemic issues that maybe we didn't see before. The traditional interventions that we incorporated within our classrooms maybe weren't quite working for all of our students. Seeing that the whole child and addressing the whole child's needs around social, emotional, academic was important now more than ever. And, how we engage with community partners. All of those pieces were starting to change and starting to come to light.
So those years were really hard for all of us, the pandemic between especially 2020 to 2022. And there was also a confluence of other things happening in the background. So we didn't see our students for a long period of time in person. And so we not only didn't see what needs they needed for well-being, but we also didn't see maybe all of their academic needs as closely as we would in the classroom. What was happening in the district was, and across the state, was a decline of enrollment. And so that loss of enrollment and also that led to a loss of revenue. And so the district had to start making some budget reductions during those same years. So there was a series of sort of hard contextual factors that we were facing, in addition to some collection revenue caps that happened for our levies. So when I think about that time, we made some reductions, and that came in the form of many things, but in particular, the PBSES coaches. So talk to me a little bit about that, and we can go from there as well.
Yeah, through the reductions and that process that we were in, the reduction of the PBSES coaches and having them return to classroom spots was really hard. And I know that it was a loss at the district level. Why don't you tell us about how it felt at the school level?
Yeah, it was a huge loss for our educators. They were there to help support us with our students, and because their role started to change a little bit with the impacts of COVID, they were that extra body in the school that someone could call on to help when a student was having a difficult time, and that person wasn't there. And so for many schools, specifically at the elementary school, that was a huge loss, and it is something that is for some still being felt today. And I know we'll talk a little bit about how things are moving forward, but it is still a feeling that we have within some educators and some buildings.
I mean, that indeed is a loss, and let's acknowledge that and take a moment to, when we have loss, to talk about the grief and how that feels and how that can linger. And it was all hands on deck those school years when we were coming back from COVID, and so when you're a team accomplishing hard things, you feel even more committed to each other and the kinds of roles that exist within a school building. And so acknowledge that, hard moment for all of us, whether we were here in the district but also not, but from afar and what I'm hearing you say, particularly hard here. At the same time, I think there can be multiple things that are also true, which includes things were evolving. We were starting to see a need for more specialized, additional complementary skill sets to help once we started to realize the depth potentially of the needs that were manifesting coming out of COVID, as well as other shifts that we just needed to make because everything was evolving overall. So talk a little bit about some of the next steps or things that are in place now that help us move towards a different future on behalf of our students.
Mm-hmm. One of the specific changes from the PBSES coaches to the integrated MTSS specialist is the work that is directly supporting students. So the academic supports for students who have missed learning or unfinished learning from the COVID years. So we're really working towards blending supports in both behavior and academic, and I'm super excited about that. The other part of what we're doing differently now is to bring in some complementary skills and expertise that support the classroom teacher in the form of school social workers and behavior specialists who aren't teachers, but they support teachers with our common goal of helping the whole child of all the kids in our system.
And I think that adds to the strong community partnerships that are being built, and how we can utilize all of those components to really support what's best for our students.
Got it, thank you. I think it's important to say that our students are amazing when they enter our school and campuses every single day. And so all of our work is really meant to help find the additional ways we can support them and meet their needs so they can be their best selves. And that does come through the form of also partnerships. In addition to Swedish mental health work, we have great partners now with Care Solace, with Communities in Schools and the Garage and many others. And it is an ecosystem. A school district can do a lot, but we can't do it alone. And we want to benefit from the mutually agreed upon ways that we can support our students in the best ways possible. So I'm hopeful for the future as it relates to our continued work to learn, respond, and be intentional about our shifts. And that is a note that we have to, when we make those hard shifts, maybe experience a loss or a reduction, that we are able to name that in the moment and continue to say, here's how we will move forward together and generate that in partnership. Those are my final thoughts, but would love to hear if there's anything in closing you want to share.
Yeah, I think that we see a need for a really robust support system. Being partners in this work and being engaged in the work is what is best for our students.
Mm-hmm. I'm really hopeful. The students' needs are changing, then we need to evolve and change too. So I go into this next set of years just super hopeful.
Great. Thank you so much, and we'll see you around in schools.